Dude, you have got to finally get into this band. Drop the link, I'll sample some of the stuff on Spotify. Oh, you poor, sweet, naive child. One does not simply try band. One dedicates one's life journey to the exploits of consuming every auditory waveform of said band. That sounds legitimately awful. Who would want to do that? A real music fan? Fine, guilt trip unlocked. Where do I even begin? Well, it all began in the year of our Lord 1973 when the first of 57 life-altering albums came to fruition.
Hey neighbor, it's 7 on Sunday. For this 299th episode, I thought it appropriate to track down the bands with some of the largest album discographies on the planet. Pay your respects, drop an F for Buckethead in the comments since he's not on the list. It felt like low-hanging fruit, plus he's not a band, he's a man with a bucket on his head.
That's the joke.
Recording an album is a time-consuming process that's different for every artist. For some, it's an event happening once in a blue moon. For others, how about 2 albums every year on a slow year? Now, I'm only counting studio-recorded albums here, not live albums or compilations, although we may have to talk about some of those too. Cross my heart and hope to die, you will never be starving for content with the bands we're about to get into. All of them have at least 20 albums, with the heavy hitters topping out at over 100 in the arsenal.
But if you try sometime, it just might find, it just might find you what you need.
The music industry is a never-ending sonic highway begging to be fed, something our veteran tour guides the Rolling Stones not only survived, but conquered over the course of 7+ decades together. The Stones treat albums like mile markers, reminding us why they're one of the most legendary bands of all time by stepping in and out of their comfort zone while leaving breadcrumb trails you can easily follow. Mick Jagger's swaggering vocals and the electrifying riffs of Keith Richards led the charge into the mainstream with their debut self-titled album landing in the UK in 1964. Whether they were dishing out gritty blues-infused rock on big classics like Sticky Fingers, or experimenting with funkier grooves on Exile on Main Street, even if you're not a fan, you have to admit that they never settled for mediocrity. Well, debatable, but at least not for too long. Each release was a testament to their craft, capturing the zeitgeist of multiple generations, whether they were channeling the rebellious spirit of the 60s, reflecting the disillusionment of the 70s, or just attempting to survive the flaming wrath of the 80s. That means the iconic blues rock group released a new album 59 years after their debut, which I have to put some respect on that because that averages out to a new studio album a little bit more than every 2 years, and that's not even counting live or compilation albums. The Melvins are a long-running sludge metal rock band that never quite made it big, yet they're still kicking today with more than 20 albums to their name. King Buzzo led this trio of mad scientists to the underground music scene and beyond, assembling album after album of expansive auditory experiments that often called for manic drumming and bone-crushing riffage. Their polarizing frontman has been outspoken against fans unwilling to accept change, saying something along the lines of, "We've never been controlled by what our fans want," although it's not hard to believe you would enjoy the newer stuff if you've been around for a while. Not to get all "they're not like other bands" on ya, but just from a partial discog interpretation, I can tell they thrive in chaos by blending elements of punk, metal, sludge, and grunge to create their own twisted brew of sonic madness. Melvins have released a grand total of 26 albums, dating back to their 1987 debut, Gluey Porch Treatments. That's not far off the pace of an album a year, and they're not done yet, considering their last record, the solid as hell Bad Moon Rising, came out in 2022. Today's video is brought to you by you. Channel memberships are here, and they're bringing you early access to my content and more. Become a member by clicking join below. It's $5 a month and directly supports me as an independent creator. Understandably, not everyone can do that, so if you want to help out for free, make sure you're subscribed and tap that like button. Now let's get back to it. If you're hoping to dive headfirst into the murky depths of alternative rock to discover the post-punk band that inspired many of your favorite bands, The Fall and their charismatic captain Mark E. Smith are the brilliant minds you seek. Heralded as the most prolific band of the British post-punk movement, you'd think that meant sold-out tours and stacks of hits, but this was never the case. They're cult status legends that never hit the mainstream. So why do The Fall have so many albums? It's almost like Smith had a direct line to the cosmos where the universe whispered, and he kept channeling the whispers into the albums that just kept on coming. The Fall were pretty committed to the intricacies of post-punk, right down to spoken word pieces, political satire, and fire-breathing instrumental work. Mark E. Smith's eccentric energy came with a bottomless well of ideas, and each album was a canvas for his lyrical wit and unconventional musical vision. Beginning with LP1 in 1979, The Fall put out a remarkable 31 albums, with the final titled New Facts Emerge coming the year before Mark E. Smith's untimely death at the age of 60 in 2018. The Beach Boys, the evergreen architects of the California sound, are synonymous with surf-soaked harmonies and sunshiny melodies for good reason, or should I say, good vibrations. Their long-winded discography endures the test of time because, well, the best parts of it float to the surface. I'm not gonna pretend every album is worth hearing, even the diehards will tell you that, although they will never agree on which ones. Often led by the tortured talents of Brian Wilson, the Beachheads kept pushing at the boundaries of their sound by incorporating elements of rock, pop, doo-wop, and occasionally classical music without ever totally abandoning their core. From their early days as harmonizing Beach Boys to their later ventures into experimental introspection, the band's evolution is unmistakable. The Beach Boys' lasting popularity led to a total of 29 studio albums, the most recent and likely final being a good one. That's why God Made the Radio in 2012. Like any classic band, they're being milked dry for content on the compilation albums, but hey, Mike Love's gotta make money, baby! You know Trump ain't paying jack shit for those private MAGA gigs. I'd like to solve the puzzle for Australian band with a discography multiplying like rabbits, please. Maybe Kangaroos would be a more appropriate comp for Australia's most tireless traveling rock troupe, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. If you're not experienced in the ever-expanding Gizverse, I can hardly blame you, given that the band is barely 10 years old, with KG's 12-bar Brews coming out in 2012, and they've already dropped more than 24 albums since then with no end in sight. King Gizzard are psychedelic rock powerhouses, but a huge reason they're so loved lies in the band's self-imposed challenge to release an album every single year, which they've accomplished and then some. Their dedication to exploring an array of genres with their own twist is fascinating to observe. Much like the gravely misunderstood beaver working away at his dam while the humans label them invasive pests. Lizard Wizard sorcery is really important to the modern music ecosystem, and I say that not because I'm a rabid fan that's heard everything, far from it. It's more that I'm impressed at their creative fervor to write and record such expansive albums in an increasingly singles-heavy world. There seems to be a really democratic nature to the band's creative process that keeps egos in check by treating all members equally, allowing the ideas to flow out of them and work it out in real time as a group before committing to their next musical direction. DIY works well for them. In fact, it's led to 25 studio albums at time of recording, and you can make damn sure that number will skyrocket if they continue anywhere near the pace they've maintained over the past decade plus. Acid Mother's Temple, the Japanese psychedelic rock collective led by guitarist Kawabata Makoto, has built a reputation for their extremely adventurous approach to making music. Unlike most bands who hit the studio with demos, lyrics, or at least vague outlines of songs, AMT's Huge Discography relies heavily on their improvisational skills, characterized by building tracks out of spontaneous jam sessions that often feature extended instrumental passages. Jamming this way builds up a mountain of material to sift through, with the best ideas put directly onto corresponding albums that fit with the sound achieved in that state of musical zen. They've collaborated with a diverse range of artists since their inception in 1995, releasing their self-titled debut the following spring before unleashing a cavalcade of albums at a rate I don't think anyone could have predicted. By handling much of the production and distribution process themselves, AMT retains full creative control and can release music on their own terms, which, safe to say, is often, with their most productive year 2018 resulting in a mind-blowing 8 albums. Acid Mother's Temple has unveiled a whopping 101 studio albums, popping them out like they're Dalmatians, with their most recent coming in early 2022. This is by far the most of any band we've seen so far on the list. But what if I told you what's coming at number 1 isn't a band at all? Where to even begin? It's Frank Zappa. The avant-garde pioneer left a priceless mark on music with his truly massive discography. Zappa's tireless work ethic and dedication to documenting his musical ideas became the platform on which he ran his satirical campaign to educate the world. Zappa's insatiable appetite for innovation led to him maintaining a grueling recording and touring schedule, allowing the legend to capture a vast array of albums spanning genres from rock to jazz to classical and experimental nonconformity. I did say my number 1 pick wasn't a band, but in the early years, he did have a backing band called the Mothers of Invention, who he collaborated with pretty extensively. There's many conflicting reports on how liked or disliked Zappa was, but most walked away knowing that even if they weren't gonna get royalties or proper credit for playing on one of his records, they'd at least become better at their own craft just from working alongside him. Frank Zappa hated music industry standards, so he started his own independent record label, Zappa Records, to give himself the freedom to release albums the way he intended with no outside control or influence. Freak Out, released in 1966, is Frank's studio album debut, with the musician dropping his band by the mid-70s, going on to record and release a total of 62 albums in his lifetime.
But wait, there's more!
Not only did Zappa release 62 in his lifetime, the Frank Zappa estate have now released 64 posthumous albums. Comment below and let me know some of the Zappa albums I should check out, because, to be honest, I've only heard a few, so I would especially appreciate recommendations for him, King Gizzard, or the band The Fall. That's a wrap on the year's first SOS. These will now be dropping once a month, so make sure you're subscribed and stay tuned for a very special 300th episode. You can catch up on the entire series above me or else linked below. Another episode you'll like is over here, and I'll see you soon on ARTV.